Hey guys, what's up? It's Law coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides Witchlaw. What walks? Get another episode of Walks Witchlaw, and I don't know. Another example. Don't really know exactly what to say, but what I will say. Sorry, my apologies. Just putting up my walking thing on the Apple Watch. What I will say is that at the moment, I'm just thinking about the fundamental disagreements I have with the conventional advice that an individual needs to try harder. And that is like the overarching thing. It's like people as individuals are the problem, and it's not looking at groups of people and group human behavior that is the problem. Because oftentimes, I think I recently explained this, how in a lot of people like to say, have these like random statements like, oh, that's just life. Oh, life isn't fair. Oh, get over it. No. We're not living in like prehistoric times where I'm walking around and a dinosaur could just like step on me. You know what I'm saying? We're living in a civilized society where there are supposed to be systems in place that do as much as possible to make it so life is fair. That's idealistically the way that things should be and should be run. Not to mention could be. Very much could be. And as technology advances further, there will be an even greater probability of that being the case. There will be an even greater probability. However, there is an equal chance that technology will end up being utilized for the opposite reason. Technology could very easily be used to exacerbate the same problems that we already have. So, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of risky. I mean, I put a lot of faith in tech just because I don't really see much else to hope for at this point. I don't personally have a whole lot of hope. I tend to be, I guess, fairly pessimistic. I guess I'm not really a super optimistic person in terms of systemically, and I think a lot of that is just due to brutal awareness. But I guess I have a hope in tech just because I want to have hope in something. You know, like I hope that the potential is there and that it could work, but it really depends. You know, it really depends. And I think there's a lot of people who, it's a human limitation. I mean, as always, it's a human limitation. I've said it a lot of times before. A lot of these problems, they are human level problems. Okay? So, yeah, it's just, I mean, what else is new? You know what I'm saying? It's just, we're already in this pickle as is due to very poor human judgment and calculation and planning. If it wasn't for that, the nature of this podcast and everything up until, I mean, the whole system would be different. I'm getting a little bit off track, aren't I? We're talking about how, yes, it is the 21st century. yes, at this point, life should be relatively fair. We're not living in some animalistic time. And so a lot of these attitudes, I almost feel like they're modern American ideals. I feel like it's possible that maybe they always existed. Like people always kind of knew that. Oh, life isn't fair. But it seems like kind of a modern American or just a modern society kind of amalgamation of things where it's just like, what? I mean, I really think in the past you had more systemic comfort and systemic confidence for like a period of time. And then, like, as time has progressed, more and more people have been wary of government and, like, not really trusting and you know, all this stuff. And it's sort of, it's caused a lot of people, oh, life isn't fair. Oh, you know, insurance companies, they're terrible. But we're not doing anything to fix it. And it's weird because it shouldn't be that difficult. But people, every human is limited. You know, every human is limited. There's so many people, the people who are probably most hungry to rise up and try to fix things are probably the most shackled by stress. They're the people who, they don't really have time to vote or really get that involved in politics because it's just, especially now, people are swamped, you know? And so there's really not much of a threat against the corruption that exists. There's not really a clear voice. And that's obviously a problem. It's a big problem. But that's why I say it's like people's own fault. But see, the people at the top are able to maintain it because it's this compounding effect. If you're already in power and you already have a lot of money, you're not really worried about that much. Not only are you able to enjoy more and have less stress, you're also, it's very easy to just maintain. I mean, you don't have to think that critically. You don't really have to think that hard. If you have all this material and all this extra free time that in some cases has never been afforded to others, you know, you could be relatively dumb, but if you're born into a good situation, it's pretty difficult to lose that power. And obviously, there are cases of people who do. Don't get me wrong. People can start rich and make really stupid decisions. But for the most part, in terms of systemic level change, it doesn't really happen. Because it's the system. And so if you have like one weak link, it's not really going to affect things that much. Because there's still plenty of other people who can perpetuate the same beliefs. So, yeah, there's not, I mean, what else is to it? You know? Today's been a pretty interesting day, I guess. Thinking about things, and I always try to say that my philosophy is whatever's best for humanity and even elevating us to a posthuman level. And that's pretty much constantly the ideology I'm trying to straddle, is between, it's between, trying to think. It's between like Because you inherently, you really want to help people, or you should. I do. Most people should have an inherent bias to just want to make things as fair as possible. I don't think that's the case. I actually think most people have an inherent, and this is an incorrect, greedy, and immoral bias, to want to have themselves to have an advantage over others, even if they don't directly realize it. I do think a majority of people, they probably don't want to be like too much better, because that, I mean, some people kind of feel guilty, but people definitely, like, they want to be cooler, like the average person, they want to be average, but they want to be a little cooler than average, they want to have a little extra money than average. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody wants to feel a little bit more secure than everyone else. And I'm not going to say everybody thinks this way, but I think most people do at a fundamental level. And it's not excessive. I think some people, it is like, this is on a spectrum. It's on a spectrum. And that inherent behavior it's obviously just a problem, because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, oftentimes you don't need extra security, for example, than another person, or things like that. But to rewind back, I know this is sort of a messy conversation, but bear with me. I guess I'm just talking to talk. It's whatever. What am I even trying to say? Right, it's understanding this idea that, again, we know that some people are evil, and we know some people are bad people, and it's like, should those people be given the same thing as others? My inclination is probably not, but it's just a difficult moral kind of conundrum. I mean, because if you made everything more fair, you probably would end up giving extra to some people who maybe don't really appreciate it and don't really conceive of it. And so I think that's like a filtering process that we would have to go through. And I feel that technology could fix it. I'm not going to say it will, but it could. Because if everybody from birth has a Neuralink implanted in their brain, and it basically quantifies and scores anytime there's a greedy thought, anytime there's an unempathetic thought, anytime a bad behavior is done and it's scored, then you might see some people change. If people legitimately can't get away with things, if everything's tracked. I think there's obvious problems with that, though. I mean, you have pride, I think, would get to people's heads, people who are able to score higher. And then the other thing is a lack of forgiveness. It might be too overbearing for some people, because obviously even now, lots of people have some people have a bad past or a bad history, and then they move on and they actually get better. And so it wouldn't really be fair for there to not be a degree of forgiveness. So I guess you would have to have some type of forgiveness baked into the system. But I don't know that the scores, I mean, maybe the scores don't need to be public or something. I'm not really sure, though, because it would probably be a good thing for them to be public, because then you would be able to see who's a good person or not. But I guess there would have to be some kind of forgiveness, because that would be kind of crazy if everything was that permanent. But then again, allegedly things are that permanent. Although, I mean, I know in Christianity, forgiveness is a big factor. I don't know about other religions. I'm assuming it's like a similar story where, yes, like God tracks everything, but there is a layer of forgiveness. So it's kind of like, I don't know, and we'd probably have to replicate that, because I do see how it could get crazy. But I don't know, in my humble opinion, I think this is like the most feasible thing. And you could probably train certain humans and consciousnesses to be optimal and ideal, even if without the Neuralink, maybe they wouldn't. Because I think through like forced education and training, and again, forced surveillance, people would absolutely act different. They just would. And I guess then you get into an issue of inequality regarding certain people's brains. Like, obviously, I think my brain would do better in a system like this, whereas some people would be very overwhelmed and not happy at all and just very uncomfortable. But that's why I'm mentioning it would be something incorporated from birth, which is way different than, like, of course, present day. If you just flung it onto people, a lot of people wouldn't like it. But if it was just like from birth, that's all you knew, I can't imagine it would be that crazy. Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like that makes sense to me. I don't know. It's just like interesting, you know? It's interesting. I guess you'd have to see how the psychology works, but then again, like, that becomes the problem, because it's evident that we can observe not all people are equal. There are just people who are very mean, and it's difficult to say how much of it is genetic and how much of it is environmental. But what we do know is that the poor environments that have been created by an unfettered modern society seem to breed and brood more of the worst traits. There appears to be some kind of a regression occurring with people, where there's less care, there's less empathy, more people are just desperate, hungry to grab and get. So what's going on? And why are we allowing tech to be misused in this way? Is it really all greed? You know, do the elites have no real philosophy around it? I guess maybe I don't know who I'm dealing with. I guess that's completely possible, since I try to reason out what I do, but it is true, I don't really know any other humans who have the same behavior. So it's a tricky conundrum, I suppose. I don't know. I don't really have the answers, do I? I don't know. Guess this is just what's on my mind. I don't even remember how we got here. We were talking about, you know, fairness and what is fairness? Because fairness is probably not equality. It's probably not, because there is going to be a slight difference. But like I said, I still like the idea of it just being calculated who would do best in what career based on their physiological and genetic makeup. You could probably calculate something, and it would change like as they grow up. So of course, you know, you would have a prediction from birth, but then that might change, you know, and you would kind of be told in like a live feed, oh, like you were supposed to become a dentist, but then things happen in your life and now it turns out that, you know, it was an accurate prediction, but it turns out you're actually supposed to be a doctor. You're actually, I can't think of, you're actually supposed to be a dermatologist. You know, you went through this experience in life and it rewrote a portion of your DNA. You know, we couldn't predict it super accurately. So yeah, I know, you know, so it's like you're 6 years old, it's been sitting there saying you're going to be a dentist, but now at 6 years old, you're going to be a dermatologist. But then, hey, maybe 6 years later, now you find out, oh no, you actually were going to be a dentist. You know what I'm saying? And so you would still have school, but school would probably be shorter. Like, because you wouldn't, it wouldn't need to be that long. Um, yeah, I don't think school would need to be that long. It would it would be fine for school to be shorter than it is now, at least. You know what I like? I don't know. Because if you have all, like, most of the, I guess, the baked in length to school is just due to a lot of waste on, like, general education, as well as just kind of a programming facility. Because it's like, yeah, actually, it's a good question, because I don't, I guess it's for a baseline, because you could definitely make the argument some people could get through school, graduate faster, and then start working, like, before others. But I guess you want to design it to be, like, at a safe baseline, because you don't want, like, one person to just, like, speed run through school and then other people are stuck, because that's not really fair. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I feel like it goes both ways. You know what I mean? That's just my intuition about that, or why, I don't really know. But you could definitely shorten school with everybody with a Neuralink, I'm sure. Just gets tricky, though. There's potentially caveats, but we've definitely hit a stagnant point with humanity, and we do have to think about a change in systems, because something is not working. And I think that, again, the primary issues are, I think I've described before, greed, ignorance. Those are kind of the primary problems that I understand. I don't know. That's just my take. I mean, again, what do I know? Maybe in a year I will change my mind. But these are just some general things. But it's been Schla, and now it's time to buy Schla. So, see ya, Schla.